As we reported, Viacom saw profits rise 52%, but just how well positioned are they in the cable business? As AJ mentioned, joining us on the phone, Frank Biondi. From 1987 to 1996, Mr. Biondi served as the CEO of Viacom. He's currently Senior Managing Director at Waterview Advisors. Mr. Biondi, welcome to Bloomberg News. Always good to have you on.
Yeah, good to be here, man. Thanks.
Sir, as Adam Johnson just mentioned, profit at Viacom, your former company, rising 52%, and most of that, as he correctly pointed out, on cable TV ad sales climbing. Have media companies like Viacom weathered the economic storm?
Well, I think so. I mean, unlike your report prior to this, all companies are doing pretty well relative to expectation, and the old media is certainly no exception. Time Warner, Fox, now Viacom, all reporting extremely solid results.
Well, Viacom's strategy of cutting costs at its Paramount Pictures studio, does that strategy get as much of the credit for this as does the ad revenue?
You know, probably not. I mean, it looked in their report as if their revenues were down at Paramount, which, cost cutting will certainly help in that environment, but that was largely driven by home video. Which is not particularly a Viacom problem. It seems to be, a trend across the entire studio business, declining DVD sales. But I think cost controls at the networks and stronger revenue, principally, well, actually both from MSO fees, cable operators fees, and from advertising, really led to a pretty strong expansion in their operating income. So very encouraging on that point.
Well, sir, then let me ask you, as we mentioned, the profit of Viacom rising 52%, did that number surprise you?
Yeah, I think it did. I mean, I think everybody expected that it would be up. I think that's a pretty significant number. I think all of us who've been around the company, I'm still a shareholder, hope it continues.
Well, we should mention also part of the Viacom family, that MTV brand, as you know, started with VJs, music videos, music countdowns, and now reality shows like the popular Jersey Shore, whose recent season premiere was watched by an estimated 5 million viewers. How has that evolution progressed, in your opinion?
Well, it's pretty typical of most of the very successful cable networks, whether it's USA, Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, or even something that is as targeted as MTV. There's clearly a tremendous interest in original programming, whether it's reality-based, whether it's scripted. It's done well, it'll get an audience. And the cable industry, has really brought the cable network industry has really brought some significant competition to the broadcast network business over the years, and it shows in the share that they take.
Is the MTV brand sustainable over the long term?
Oh, I think so. As long as you're going to have teenagers, you're going to have MTV.
All right. We should mention overall revenue at Viacom was flat, and that was due mostly to a drop in DVD sales. Any warning signs there as far as consumer spending habits are concerned, or is this more a product of the availability of TV and movies on the internet?
I think it's probably a combination of both, but I think the longer-term trend is really the ability to get films, on television or in your home in a much more convenient fashion than just going to the video store.
And speaking of films, Paramount has lagged its peers in the last couple of years. What do they have to do to turn things around?
Well, I mean, every studio goes through these cycles, and I think it's just a question. They've got a new management team in place. They seem to have their feet under them. And it's just a question now of developing additional motion picture product that the public's going to like. Sometimes it takes a number of years to get that to happen, but, they'll get it. Everybody comes up.
Well, but back in June, Viacom declared its first ever quarterly dividend, and next month, Viacom's going to switch to a fiscal year that ends on September 30th. I was wondering if I could get your thoughts on these two developments.
Well, listen, when the companies were together, CBS and Viacom, they paid a dividend. When they split up, CBS only paid a dividend, and Viacom didn't. Then CBS cut its dividend last year when they were having some pretty difficult fiscal results. I think all you're seeing is the same level of dividends now being paid at two companies. And that's because of common ownership and control by Sumner Redstone.
And as far as the switch to the fiscal year?
I'm not sure it makes a whole lot of difference. I don't read a terrible amount into that.
If I might ask you in our last 30 seconds, challenges ahead for Viacom, do you see any?
Well, I think, look, there's always the question of how do you deal with the internet and digital. You're basically an intellectual property company. They're kind of a dominant force through cable distribution. None of the media companies have yet totally figured it out, or some would argue they haven't even come close to figuring it out. But as the consumer, drives more and more toward a la carte, what I want, when I want it, that can be done through the internet. And the studios, the networks, even book publishers are all going to have to figure out how to deal with that.
Frank Biondi, the former CEO of Viacom, joining us on the phone. Mr. Biondi, a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for your time.